Hi there, my name is John Gazvinian, and you're with Scholars to Storytellers, where we help senior academics, senior scholars in the humanities and social sciences get to trade book success in 9 months or less. So today I want to talk about a really important topic, one that I comes up all the time when I'm out giving workshops and lectures and talking to clients. That's the question of how exactly do I find my story? Again and again, I'll give these workshops and people come up to me and they say, okay, great, I want to do a trade book, and I think I want to write about this topic or that topic, but I'm not quite sure how to frame this as a trade book. What exactly I think I know how I would write it as an academic book, but I don't want to do it as an academic book. I think it has potential to reach a large public general audience. So how do I do that? How do I kind of find that story, right? So in other words, this is the importance of framing your topic. And to be totally honest with you, when I get this question, I always think, well, I don't really know how to give a cookie cutter response to that. I want to give a response to you, but it really depends. I need to kind of talk to you and try to find out a little bit more about the topic and think it through with you. But I always feel like that's kind of an unsatisfactory answer. So I try to kind of think about ways that we can make this generalizable and come up with some general principles for how exactly this can be done. So that's what I'm going to try to do today, is to give some overall tips and tricks for what to do when you're in that situation where you're ready to start a new book and you have this topic you're excited about and you think it could be a trade book, but you're not quite sure how to find that story, how to frame your topic, right? The first thing I want to say about this is hard, right? This is actually the most uncomfortable part of the process. I recognize that. I have seen this again and again with the clients that I coach. This is the part we struggle with, we spend the most time on, where they tend to get the most discouraged, but also where we sometimes have the coolest and most exciting breakthroughs, right? So, yes, this is uncomfortable. It's new, it's something you haven't done before. Accept that. Be ready for that. But also, and I really do feel strongly about this is the most important part of the process. I believe, and you may not agree with me, but I actually feel very strongly about this, that this is 80% of the work. When I coach a client over the course of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to get to a proposal that's ready to send out to agents and to shop around with big publishers, um, I actually find that this is the hardest part, right? But that it's 80% of the effort. That if we can just crack through this part, the rest of it is downhill. And I've seen this again and again because you know how to write. Finding the right that kind of voice that's good for trade is a different kind of challenge. But fundamentally, you know how to write a book. You know how to conceptualize your ideas. You have some sense of what the book is going to be about or the kinds of things you want to research. It's not like you've never done this kind of stuff before. But reframing it for a general audience is hard. And if you can get through that, the rest of it, I do actually believe, usually goes downhill. The rest of it is 20%. It's mechanical stuff, a book proposal, an overview, a chapter outline, things like that, right? So again, it should feel uncomfortable. That's okay. I'm here to kind of tell you, like, breathe, accept this discomfort as part of the process, right? And don't let it give you too much stress and anxiety, right? Another way to say this is, honestly, if you're too comfortable at this stage of the process, the book will be too academic. Let me say this again. If you're too comfortable at this stage of the process, the book will be too academic. The reason for that is, if you're comfortable at this stage of the process, that means you're doing something you've done many times before. And we're trying to get away from that. We don't want you to write another academic book. Sure, if you want to frame this as an academic book, this is not going to feel uncomfortable to you. That's something you've done 2 or 3 times probably by the time we find each other and you're ready to do a trade book. So expect discomfort, embrace discomfort, and actually recognize that that's part of the creative process. And you'll look back and with a tremendous sense of satisfaction if you're able to pull this off when you look back on this kind of moment of breakthrough. Because once you've done this once, the second and third trade books become way easier. So, how do you do this? Now, again, I want to emphasize there is no set cookie cutter method for this, right? But here are some general principles that I think might help. The first thing to recognize is your book's got to have a message. Now, that's different from an argument or a thesis or a kind of an intervention into the field, right? Message, right? What is your book about? Fundamentally, a clear, succinct message that anyone can understand, not just your colleagues, not other academics, but anyone, your own mother, your neighbors, your dentist, whatever, should be able to understand immediately when you tell them in one sentence what this book is about and the message that it has and what this is going to do for our lives, how this is going to help us kind of understand the world in more interesting ways, right? The message, I cannot say this enough. It should not be, it's complicated. This is a complicated subject, or this stuff is just kind of important. You may laugh when you hear me say this, but you'd be amazed how many people I talk to when I say, well, what is the fundamental message of your book? What are you really trying to say with this book? What does the American book buying public really need to hear? What are they going to be left with when they read this book? And people come back to me and they say, well, I think this kind of, the message is that it kind of complicates our understanding about, blah, blah. And I say, stop. That is an academic message, right? Or you hear, well, I think what the message of this book is that this topic and this way of looking at things actually sheds a lot of new important light on a number of different things. It kind of helps us understand kind of, this thing better and that thing better. And I think that's, again, stop. That's an academic message. Your message should be clear, succinct, and it should take a big swing at a big topic. That is something I hear again and again from agents, including agents I've sent my clients' proposals to. They say, look, it's just not big enough. It's cool. It's really important work. It's interesting work. It's just not big enough. It doesn't take that big bite out of a big topic. Now, does that mean, let's stop here. Does that mean that every trade book has to take a big swing at a big topic? Are you all going to be, Jared Diamond, Guns, Germs, and Steel? No. Doing like a history of the world or whatever, like Yuval Harari, Sapiens? No. Not every book needs to be that big, right? There are great trade books that just say, hey, here's this really obscure figure from history that you've never heard of, who you should have heard of because they actually fundamentally changed the course of whatever. Oh, but notice what I did there. They fundamentally changed the course of something, okay? So yes, it can be a small-ish topic, but it has to have a big message, right? Big swing, or a big topic. Let's put it that way. Ideally, it takes a big swing at a big topic, but at least one of the two. And again, notice what I'm already doing here. This is not a cookie cutter thing, right? I'm trying to offer some general principles, and they don't apply in every single case. But what I think is important in every case is your book should leave us with a clear, succinct message, or at least be bold, right? Think in a bold and not limited, overly cautious, overly neurotic way, which is the typical academic tendency. It's fine to do that when you're a grad student or a junior academic writing your first monograph. But by the time you get to this point, you got to be bold, right? So here are some hints. The biggest hint is the things you think are important are actually not that important. I'm sorry to say, the stakes for your field, the interventions that your colleagues are going to get all excited about are things literally no one in academia outside academia will care about. So don't go talking to your colleagues about how I want to do a trade book about this. They'll all say, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I would definitely buy that. Well, of course they would buy that. They're your colleagues. They're academics. And probably they're being nice to you as well. Talk to other people in your lives. Those kinds of things no one really cares about outside academia. Now, does that mean, here's an important point, that might seem depressing to you, but does that mean you can't incorporate them or weave them into the book in some way? No, absolutely not. One of the biggest misconceptions about writing for trade is that you're writing for complete idiots who somehow don't care about or can't handle a sophisticated argument that actually makes some reference to debates within your field. Quite the contrary. The American book buying public, the people who consumes, quote, serious nonfiction, which is the category you're all operating in, actually really want to hear sophisticated, interesting arguments. And they like it when you tell them things like, well, so over the 20 years ago in the field of experimental psychology, we used to think this. And then there was a whole new bunch of people who came along and said we should think this way. We like that stuff. It's okay. But here's the thing. That stuff has to be seamlessly integrated into the story in a way that only people really invested in these things will actually notice them, right? For everyone else, your book is just going to read like a great story. And at some point on page 132, in a random middle of some random paragraph somewhere, you're going to drop in a little bit of that. And then you're going to do that again 6 pages later, a little bit more. And by the time they get to the end of that chapter, they're going to go, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. Because, really what they're saying is that actually what we used to think, what I learned about psychology, when I was in school, actually, that doesn't apply anymore. That's really interesting. This book really opened my eye. But you see what you did? You ease them into it with a larger, entertaining, engaging story, which is very different from what you do in academia, right? So yes, you can incorporate those kinds of things about the stakes and the intervention in your field and your theoretical framework, even things like that, but just don't call it that and don't lead with it, right? Lead with a clear, succinct message. So these are some general tips, but you might be thinking, okay, cool. Well, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my story? And I'm sorry to say, you're not going to like hearing this, but these general principles are only going to get you so far. The reality is that, a lot of this is kind of case by case. And I don't know you, and I don't know your subject matter, right? So what do you do next, right? Let's say you're excited to write that trade book. You kind of get what I'm saying here in some of these general principles. You've gone away and done some brainstorming, but you're still not sure exactly how to find your story. Well, I have 2 options for you. There's really only 2 things you can do at that point. One, I'm just going to be honest with you here. One is to hire scholars to storytellers to do some private coaching with you. And we've worked with dozens of clients where we take you from a concept to what we call an agent-ready proposal in a short amount of time, in 9 months or less. We work with you. I work with you on framing your ideas, finding your voice as a writer, storyteller. Then one of my editors works with you on polishing up the proposal. My publicist works with you on doing the marketing plan, the comp titles. I then polish it up even more with you. Then we go out to our network of agents, 10, 12 agents that we work with. Great. But I recognize, honestly, that that's not cheap and it's not for everybody. So I'm going to present you with a second option that you can do that's a little more affordable, that I'm really excited about, which is this June, we are hosting a retreat where we are going to spend 3 days working on exactly these kinds of questions on a much more individualized level, right? It's going to be hosted at the Vassar Institute for the Liberal Arts, which is a brand new, amazing space. If you haven't seen it or heard about it, go and check it out. It's gorgeous. It's in Poughkeepsie, New York, on the Hudson River. They have this great purpose-built facility just for the liberal arts with 50 hotel rooms and so on. So we're going to be taking over that space and doing a little retreat, or taking over some of that space. We'll see, depending on how many of you sign up. And for 3 solid days, we're going to be working on exactly these kinds of questions: how to find your story, how to find your voice, how to, all of these kinds of things, right? But that's not all we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing so much cool stuff: writing exercises, individual writing exercises to help you loosen up and find your non-academic voice, group writing exercises, workshopping of writing. We're going to have agents, actual, real, live agents, either in person or on Zoom. Haven't decided yet. Depends on a lot of factors, but not 1, not 2, several serious New York agents that we work with who specialize in working with academics, who like to work with academics, to make that transition to writing for trade, who are going to be here to give you advice. We're going to get advice from 1 or 2 top New York editors at big publishers. I can't say who just yet. We're still trying to nail that down. But rest assured, we'll have at least 1 or 2 of those. One night, we're going to do something that I think is super cool, which is a pitch slam, a sort of Shark Tank style event, where with an open bar, so you can relax if that helps you. But basically, for 2 hours, we're going to have a panel of 3 agents, and you're going to have 60 seconds or maybe 120 seconds if we're feeling generous to pitch your idea and get some direct feedback from agents. We're going to do social media training. One of the questions I hear most often: hey, what if I don't do social media? How do I do that? We're going to have a specialist who does social media for academics, who's going to help and talk to you about how to do that. We're going to have op-ed training from a guy who is amazing that I met recently, who specializes in helping academics get op-eds placed in major media outlets. Marketing training. We're going to talk about, we're going to have my publicist talk about the marketing plans and comp titles and all kinds of things like that. And I think most importantly, you're going to meet a community of your peers, people just like you who are on that journey, and who you're going to learn from and be in community with for 3 days. And the best part of all of this is I'm throwing in something that is a $1,200 value, which is 1 year. That's right, 1 whole year of group coaching, which means you get to be now part of a cohort that continues well past the 3 days. Because I think oftentimes what happens with these kinds of retreats is that we all get together for about 3 days. Everything's wonderful. We learn all these cool things, and then everyone goes away and completely forgets about what we talked about. I don't want to do that. So what I've decided to do is to throw in this. I think is a really good deal. 1 full year of group coaching, so that you actually feel like you're part of a cohort that continues to. Once you've kind of bonded and kind of learned all about one another's work and continue to give each other feedback, we can do that for a whole year, and you can come to our group coaching and meet even more people who who are on this kind of journey from scholar to storyteller. And on top of all of that, this of course includes full room and board at the Vassar Institute. So how much is all this going to cost me, John? Guess what? This is, I think, a steal. $26.97, all inclusive, all your meals. And good meals, by the way. The food is apparently quite good, from what I hear, at the Vassar Institute. And accommodations in a quiet, leafy, beautiful part of the world in the middle of June for 3 nights for $26.97. I don't think you're going to get a better deal than that anywhere. I defy you to find a retreat that is specifically geared towards academics who want to write trade books and that gives them all the things that we're going to give you for 3 solid days and a bunch of meals. And a lovely place to get away, plus a whole year of group coaching for $26.97. But the catch to this is that after the 25th, after this Tuesday, which is tomorrow, if you're listening to this on the day that that the video is going up, the price goes up. So $26.97 is the early bird rate. It's going to go up by about 30% after Tuesday. So after tomorrow, potentially, or today, depending on when you're listening to this. So don't waste any time. If you're interested in this, if you've got questions, get in touch. But if you are interested, this is the URL that you need to go to right here. www.scholarstostorytellers.com/retreat. Yes, I know that URL looks a little bit weird. It's because our name is really long and it's hard to fit on one line with a www and the rest of it. So I'm sorry, but I think you can figure it out. www.scholarstostorytellers.com/retreat. And of course, if you've got questions, is this right for me? Email me, john@scholarstostorytellers.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And yes, by the way, we take institutional funds. I keep getting this question. Yes. So if you have a research budget, or a departmental fund, or a dean's fund, or an endowed chair fund, or whatever it is that you're trying to use up by June 30th, as you probably are, this is a really good way to spend it. We will get onboarded as a vendor if we need to at your university. Again, I think this is a bloody good deal. So I hope to see a lot of you. We've already had quite a few places booked up, actually, but there's still room. And we look forward to seeing you in June.